So I will not be following this tip in Camp Nanowrimo. I think my goal actually would be to apply in 2022. Is that even a year? Oh my God. One of the biggest things that you see newer writers do is just give you too much information. Hey there, I'm Nicole Wilbur. I am a writer and story nerd, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are, what day is it? It's March 20th, and we are fast approaching Camp Nanowrimo. If you don't know what Camp Nanowrimo is, it's basically a more free and independent version of NaNoWriMo. It takes place in April, and you can set your own goal. It's a great time to sort of set a goal and work on getting that goal done. So my plan for Camp Nanowrimo is to continue editing and rewriting my 1837 historical fiction novel, which is a disaster. You can hear about why it's a disaster, why it was a disaster there, and you can also hear about how I'm resuscitating it there. They're actually going to be on the same side, whatever, it'll be links in the description. And so in preparation for NaNoWriMo, Camp Nanowrimo, I thought I would combine two things that I've been waiting to do, which is getting ready for Camp NaNoWriMo video and a reacting to writing advice video. So I have pulled up different pieces of writing advice, and I am going to address whether or not I am going to be following that advice in NaNoWriMo. Hey there, Editing Nicole here with my glass of wine. I just wanted to say today, just before I'm uploading this, I hit 300 subscribers. It might fluctuate a little bit, so you might not see that, but thank you so much for that. That's so exciting and so incredible. In celebration, I'm going to be doing a 300 subscriber question and answer video upcoming. So if you have any questions for me about writing, about anything you've seen here, please put them down below. I'm going to be asking for a few videos because I'm low-key very convinced I won't get any questions, but if you have them, please let me know and I will answer them in a video very, very soon. All right, let's go on back. Is love your story. That's the first tip. Yeah, okay, so I feel like loving my story is important. Write the one that you're most passionate about. Yeah, I like my story for sure. I think that liking the story idea is a little bit different than liking the writing, which I'm very critical of the writing at this point. But yeah, love your story. I am definitely gonna try to make time to love my story. Number 2, withhold information from your readers. When writing fiction, only give the readers the information they need to know in the moment. Yes, okay. This piece of writing advice I think is so important, and the balance of like what you're withholding and what you're saying is huge. And a big change that brought my novel from like disaster first draft to what I'm writing now was a decision on what information to withhold. So like one of the biggest changes is honestly that I'm now withholding a ton of information, and that information is now becoming like revelations and such. Exposition as ammunition down the road. And I think especially in openings, one of the biggest things that you see newer writers do is just give you too much information. And that is something that I've been very cognizant of. So withholding information from the readers and only giving the right amount and sort of crafting, like being very strategic in what information I'm giving when is 100% something I'm doing for this Camp NaNoWriMo. Number 3. Write simple sentences. Okay, think of Shakespeare's line "to be or not to be," famous for its brevity and the way it quickly describes a character's toiling over their own life. I think I'm probably kind of bad at, and that I've noticed in this version of my story, that in the first draft of my story, that there was a lot of writing that just didn't have to be there, and I felt like it was pretty overwritten in terms of like just me giving too much information and spending too much time in the character's thoughts, that sort of thing. That is not writing simple sentences though. What is writing simple sentences? Okay, I can also see that in the voice. I do have a slight tendency in writing in like my historical fiction upper class voice, I think, to complicate the sentences a little bit. I think that's a good piece of advice. I do love, I don't know if you've read Frederick Backman's writing. Maybe I'll put some quotes up here that I love from it because it is the epitome of this advice. Number 4, mix up your writing. To become a better writer, try different types of writing. Okay, yes. Okay, I just had to go get my microphone. I really hope I don't have to re-record that whole beginning, because that was like me at peak energy. Okay, we're talking about mixing up our writing. I think this is good advice to a point. Being exposed to other mediums, you can learn skills. I think playwriting, you learn a lot about dialogue and sort of setup, as well as like visualizing how a scene works. Like there's a lot of really cool skills there that I think can be applied. But I think the caveat is like, you can't write a good novel. You can't learn how to write a good novel by writing a good short story. I think you can shorten the learning curve, but it's still a different skill set. Piece of advice number 5, write every day. Great writers have a regular writing habit. Okay, this is not advice that I've always been able to follow. So I think that I do a lot better when I try to write every day and when I keep up the regular habit. The problem with me is that it says here, don't worry if what you jot down is technically bad writing or you struggle to get something onto a blank page. I think that's true to a point, but the problem that I experienced before was like, I felt like it was all bad writing and it was all a slog, but I was like, I must write every day and get this story done. So I didn't stop to go for quality. So I think you have to be very careful of quantity versus quality, as well as being like realistic. I don't know if it's necessarily write every day versus try to establish a writing routine. So for Camp Nanowrimo, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm in a new place than I usually am, or like a new old place. I think I've recorded some videos here before, but anytime my like routine location changes, which is apparently happening a lot and will continue to happen a lot because we are nomadic now, my writing routine kind of goes to crap. So I have not written. I wrote last night for a little bit, but I really have not written for a week. So in Camp Nanowrimo, I really am gonna try to get back to my morning writing habit. Also, spring forward, excuse you, like I was waking up at 6:30 and then we sprang forward and suddenly it all went out the window. But that is something I really want to try for Camp Nanowrimo. Set milestones. The average word count for a book is 75,000 words. That can make novel writing intimidating. If you're working on your first novel, stay motivated by setting milestones. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Setting milestones in terms of like, I'm going to finish these 2 scenes or finish this act. I think that's good advice. I'm definitely going by milestones in my current manuscript for 1837. I'm kind of working right now. I've been working for the past, a month and a half on the first act. I really hope I can get more steady with this because this is going to take the freaking whole year, which is okay if I don't start writing more regularly. But I'm definitely thinking that through as the first act, the second act, etc., etc. I actually think that my goal for April is going to be, I think of it in 4 acts, so is going to be to write the second act, which means I have to finish the first act before April, which gives me like 11 days. Okay, we can do that. Number 7, understand basic story structure. Yes, this is so important, whether you are a plotter or a pantser. Understanding basic story structure, I 100% agree. If you are looking for some information on basic story structure, or rather, if you're looking for some advice on which basic story structures you could look at, I have a video on Save the Cat Writes a Novel. I have a video on the anatomy of story. I have a few videos on the story grid, which are all basic story structure things. There are also tons of articles. If you want to just start with 3-act structure, you can Google that. That's blog articles, which are free. Learn strong character development techniques. Yeah, cool. Obviously, you need to learn how to develop your characters. I feel like we all know that. Apparently there's a link here where you can learn how to do that. Thank you, Masterclass. I wonder if that leads to a class. Let's just... Oh, wow. Okay, Masterclass, do they actually have an article on this? Give the protagonist flaws, give the protagonist an arc. Not necessarily, you don't necessarily need to give your protagonist an arc. Develop characters who reflect your interests. Reveal their physical world through detail. Yep, give them the right skills, create memorable characters. Seriously, that's a tip for how to develop characters, is create memorable characters. How do you do that, though? Give each one a quirk or quality. I actually hate that advice. Why should we, yes, it's okay, but I feel like just having a cast of characters where it's like a quirk or quality that defines them does not work. Could be a title like chief of police or a physical attribute like ginger haired. Like, that's not characterizing someone. That's maybe making like a minor walk-on character stand out. You know what I mean? If it's an actual character, I don't think they're amazingly good just because they have red hair. Give the reader access to their inner conflict. Well, only if it's a viewpoint character. Subvert your reader's expectations. Okay, that's cool, good character advice, I guess. Writing exercise for character development. The character questionnaire. I hate character questionnaires. Masterclass, I don't agree. Some of these are good, obviously, like having flaws, having the character give them wants and stuff. But for me, like the most effective way, I think, for developing characters is almost to go like minimal, kind of, and just make them combinations of like 2 or 3 ideas for people. And then I find it easiest to kind of define them by actions. Like, I have an idea in my head of like a few quintessential moments for those characters where I feel like they really acted as themselves. Like in Harry Potter, like Hermione running off to the library is quintessential. Like Hermione being like, excuse me, like you're gonna get us expelled, like stop breaking the rules, is like very quintessential. Whereas Ron, like, a good Ron moment, honestly, like Ron returning and then pulling Harry out of the pond in the 7th book and being like, what the hell were you thinking? That's like a quintessential Ron moment. You know what I mean? Like, just the language and the way he talks. So I like to use those versus like laundry lists and things like that. It's not a bad list, it's just not my favorite thing. Okay, let's go on to number 9. Use the active voice. Yes. Usually, yes. Number 10, take breaks when you need them. Step away from the desk and get some exercise. Totally agree with that. That is something that I feel like I need to build more into my Camp Nanowrimo plans, which is getting up every so often and like going on a walk, even like 10 minutes before I start writing, which I'm gonna get my blood flowing and think about this story, I think can be really very helpful. Number 11, kill your darlings. Know when words, paragraphs, chapters, or even characters are unnecessary to the story. Yes, that's true. I think killing your darlings, it like takes a while and you have to step back a little bit to figure out like what your darlings actually are. It's hard to know when you're drafting or writing even what a darling is because you're just kind of writing with it. I think that's more editing advice, which is not currently what I'm doing. But yeah. Okay, number 12, read other writers. Reading great writing can help you find your own voice and hone your writing skills. Yes. Okay, I think I might be making a video on this, but one of the biggest things I want to do either during or before Camp Nanowrimo is take a book that I just read. It's historical fiction. It's The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. It's so good, and I want to really break it down. And I'm basically planning on like typing up a few chapters to get a feel for like how she does the voices, how she does her description and her dialogue. I thought that book was completely excellent, but also I felt like it had a voice and like a tone similar to what I would like. Not exactly, because you're never going to match an author exactly. I do think that like the colory to this, please let me have said that right, to this writing advice is like, it's not enough just to read it. I think you kind of have to take some time to like sit there and think about it and kind of analyze what they're doing, because yes, you can learn a lot of things by osmosis, but it's going to take a lot longer than if you like sit down and say, okay, I'm going to break down where's Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, or I'm going to break down like how did this character change, or like, okay, so how much of her story is internal monologue versus dialogue. Number 13, write to sell. Oh, okay. To make a living doing what they love, fiction writers need to think like editors and publishers. In other words, approach your story with a marketing sensibility as well as a creative one. I mean, this is not advice that I am currently taking. I think, because I read a lot of historical fiction, that I have an idea of what the historical fiction market is like now, and I honestly have not done a ton of market research. I haven't dug in and been like, what are the trends? Is it increasing or decreasing or anything like that? Because I kind of just want to write my story. And maybe that's wrong. One of the pieces of advice that I've heard though is write it and then pitch it to the market. Like write it for yourself, pitch it to the market. So I don't know if I agree with that. Number 14, Write now, edit later. Okay. I have heard this so many times. You know, young writers and aspiring writers might be tempted to spend a lot of time editing and rewriting as they type. Resist that temptation. Practice free writing. So I will not be following this tip in Camp Nanowrimo. I disagree, and I thought for a long time that like the only way you can write a book is if you write now, edit later. I think what you want to avoid is spending a lot of time editing and rewriting and wordsmithing and stuff, because your book might change later on, right? And you don't want to get stuck just writing scene 2 over and over and over again, because then you'll never get forward in the book. So I understand that part. However, I've been finding, this is also a second draft, but I'm finding that as I'm writing, I want to edit it. Like originally in my outline, I had this scene with a big fire that was supposed to happen. Sorry, my tea's getting cold. Okay. This fire was supposed to happen in like scene 3 or 4, but then I was writing it and I was like, you know what? This feels too big to be like the 3rd or 4th scene in the book. I'm gonna move it to the end of the act. And so then I like reworked everything around, rewrote the scenes before that to work, and now I have sort of a different first draft. There was another example, and that inspired my characterized through dialogue video. Wow, I'm just like having all the cards here, which is, I wrote a scene and then I finished it and I was like, you know, this doesn't sound the way this character is supposed to sound. And so I went back through and I rewrote all her dialogue and some of her internal thoughts to make it sound better for her voice. And that, I don't know, it took me like 45 minutes or something. I spent the whole day on that scene, like kind of redoing the scene, but that was very productive for me. And as soon as I finished the first act, which should be in the next couple days, because I only have 2 or 3 more scenes to write, I'm planning on going back to the beginning, revisiting it, plotting it out again, rereading all of it, and like making sure I feel like I'm on the right track. So I do not agree necessarily with write now, edit later. I think it depends on the writer. Number 15, get feedback. It can be hard to critique your own writing. Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree with getting feedback. I think that is possibly the most important advice you can get. You just have to be careful on who you're getting feedback from and how much you're taking it to heart. I will not be getting feedback during Camp Nanowrimo, but my goal this year is to get 1837 into the hands of some beta readers. And number 16, think about publishing. Envision where you want your story to be published. Yeah, I think if you have a novel, you can send it to literary agents and publishing houses. You might also consider self-publishing if you really want to see your book in print. I don't like how they put that. They're like putting self-publishing as like, well, if you really want to see it in print, you could do self-publishing. I feel like that's not very nice. Masterclass, thank you. So I think self-publishing is like a very good option for a lot of stories. So anyways, yeah, think about publishing, have an idea in mind. I would love for it to be traditionally published. I have to look into this more in terms of, you know, the agents and like what the market for historical fiction is like, but it does fit, I believe, that market that I read a lot in. It's just that in Canada in the 1830s, you see a lot of historical fiction kind of around World War II, especially right now, and mine is not in that category, but I feel like that's almost a strength since it's a period that I have not seen any historical fiction focused on women written in that time period. So yeah, I'm thinking about publishing, but not anytime soon. I think my goal actually would be to apply in 2022. Is that even a year? Oh my God. For author mentor match, if it's in as good shape as I want it to be. And if I don't get into that, maybe try for the Pitch Wars thing next spring. So I have about a year, a little less than that, to get sort of a second draft done and beta readers and another draft. So yeah, thinking about publishing, motivational, inspirational, we shall see. All right, so I will link below that article from Masterclass. I hope this was interesting. I would love to hear sort of what your plans for NaNoWriMo is. What writing advice do you tend to follow? Do you have any writing advice? What writing advice do you think is completely bogus? If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.